you ever sat around with your friends and argued your top 10 NBA players of all time? Like, people be out here arguing for their top 10 with no data, no like real metrics. They just be going off the handle like,
Yo, when I grew up, Larry Bird was my favorite player, and like I grew up in Boston.
like, come on, man. Like, it's getting exhausting at this point. Most people who are arguing their top 10 are not talking about like the top 10 all-time players. They're talking about their top 10 favorite players. Like, we understand you grew up in the 80s in Boston, and Larry Bird is your favorite player of all time. I get it. But unless you have some like metrics, some criteria, like you're taking errors into consideration, all that good stuff, like I really don't want to hear about your top 10. Like, if you have some entertaining takes on why your top 10 is what it is, I'll be open to that. But 9 times out of 10, when I see dudes out here talking about their top 10, it makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. And when we talk about top 10 players, we often talk about players going head to head. So we got like Magic and Bird. We have people like Russell and Wilt. And then you also have people who just are like positional rivals like Kareem versus Shaq. And the hottest topic, the hottest comparison, especially when we're talking about the GOAT, like the number one guy for the last 10 years, all we've been hearing about is LeBron versus Jordan. Let us know in the comments, who's your GOAT? Is it LeBron? Is it Jordan? Or none of the above? Now, before we talk about the top 10 NBA players of all time, let's talk about the elephant in the room. NBA eras. Why are NBA eras so important when talking about the top 10 players in NBA history? Many of the credible sources who are coming up with top 10 lists allow eras to be weighted in terms of the championships and the achievements of the players on the list. For example, Bill Russell, rest in peace to the legend, won 11 championships, but to some, he was playing up against plumbers and firemen. Big shout out to JJ Redick. And then when you think about playoff eras in general, back in the day, it wasn't even the same. Like, guys was playing less rounds, less games. It was just a whole different playoff structure. Even the amount of teams that make the playoffs, the amount of teams in the league, all of that has to be taken into consideration. I fell in love with the NBA in the 90s. With that being said, I would be a little biased when it comes to like giving weight to certain eras. Although I'm super respectful for all the players that played in the 50s, 60s, 70s, all that good stuff, I just wasn't there. I didn't see it, and I don't know. So I didn't want to go out there giving weight to eras that I didn't actually have the opportunity to watch. So I did some research. So I checked out NBA Hoops Online and Bleacher Report. They both did reports on the different eras and gave them scores, rankings, and weighted them. So it was really helpful for this process. I also asked the fantasy hoop guys in a group chat that I'm in on Twitter. Big shout out to Josh Lloyd from the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. And after getting all of that information from all of those different people, all of those different sources, I realized that people are all over the place. Some people had the 90s weighted way lower than eras like the 70s. And some people even had the 80s with Magic and Bird both weighted very, very low. So I had to take all of that information and just make my own determination on what was the illest era of all time. And I forgot to tell you, I also asked ChatGPT if they could give me their top 10 eras of all time. So on a scale of 1 to 10, here is how I rated the eras of the NBA. For the 1940s, we gave them an era factor of 3. So just 3 because the game had just started, the rules were different, it was old school basketball. Then for the 1950s, we boosted it up to 5. For the 1960s with Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, we went to 7.5. Although many would disagree, for the 1970s, I brought it back down. I brought it back down to a 7. So we went from the 1960s at 7.5 to the 1970s for 7. And I'm telling you this, one of the reasons that I brought them down is because the NBA was just wonky. The ABA merger, The three-point line was introduced. It was just a whole different level of confusion, and also like the league needed to get some kind of stability. Then in the 1980s, we took off. We went to 9.5 for the era factor on the 80s, largely in part because of Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Like, it was just a crazy, the introduction of Michael Jordan. It was just an amazing era of basketball, and I actually had the opportunity to witness it. So that's why it went so high. Next up, the 1990s, we're gonna go 10. We talking about the bad boy Pistons. We talking about the dynasty for the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. We talking about the Houston Rockets. There was just so many teams in that era. This is when guys were like really physical, but also the game was beautiful, filled with finesse. I'm going 10 for the 1990s. Then for the 2000 with Kobe Bryant and Shaq, like, this was a great era for basketball. I'm gonna give them a 9. Then for the 2010s, we had a few rule changes happen in the era before, which kind of changed the game a little bit. So I'm gonna give them an 8.5. And last but not least, the current era that we're in, the 2020s, I'm gonna give them an 8. Like, everybody taking threes out in these streets. I really didn't deep dive on how the rule changes impacted my position, so let me know in the comments. Do you want me to make a video about the rule changes and how they influence the NBA? Yo, I hear lots of people talking about they top 10 NBA lists, but nobody got no criteria. How you ain't got no criteria, but you got a top 10 list? Do me a favor. If you don't got no criteria, don't hit my phone. Don't talk to me. Don't drop a comment on the video, on the podcast, nothing. Just stay away from me.
Okay, let's calm down a little bit, Robin. You're on YouTube doing a podcast. Want to take it easy there?
Okay, you're right. I was wilding, but listen. Here's my criteria. It's very clean. It's very simple. It's not too complex. We're not going crazy. Here we go. So I got 3 factors. NBA titles, check. Regular season MVPs, check. And last but not least, my favorite, personal opinion. I'm okay with you having your personal opinion as the foundation for you making your top 10 list. What I'm not okay with is you just throwing names like out the sky, like, yo, Anthony Edwards, like top 10 all time. Like, yeah, I grew up in Georgia, like, I know him. Like, come on, B. Let's be real. We can do better. And we're not looking at no other criteria. No all-star appearances, no all-star MVPs, no finals MVPs, no all NBA teams, first, second, or third, no scoring titles, no assist titles, or rebounding or block titles, no defensive player of the year, no rookie of the year, no sixth man of the year, no clutch award. Quick disclaimer, my criteria is heavily weighted by the era factors that I talked about earlier in this episode. Now, with no further ado, here are my top 10 NBA players of all time. Number 10, Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain could be a lot higher on this list, but he played in an era that was just different, and his individual stats are unmatched. Like, the things that he did, the reason he could do what he did was because he was playing against a different level of basketball players. There's no way that he could average 50 points a game against Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. Like, facts. However, we don't want to discount his greatness. Your man literally had 2 NBA titles and 4 regular season MVPs. So it's not like he was any kind of a slouch. He put up 100 points in a game, which is a feat that has been unmatched until this day. So I'm going to go number 10, Wilt Chamberlain. Number 9, with 4 NBA championships, 2 regular season MVPs, the baby face assassin from the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry. Now, I gotta let you know, before Steph Curry secured his 4th title, he was not on this list. There were other guys that were on this list. But facts are facts, man. Like, the guy has just been like otherworldly. He's revolutionized the game. He's doing things that people have never done. So number 9 is Steph Curry for the greatest all-time NBA players. Number 8, with 4 NBA titles and one regular season MVP. This one is Shaquille O'Neal. In this era that he played in, he played against Olajuwon, he played against Ewing, and then he got with Kobe Bryant and started winning some championships. Also won a chip with young Dwayne Wade. Listen, Shaquille O'Neal was arguably the most dominant player in NBA history. So although Steph Curry has an MVP award more than him, one more MVP award than Shaq, Shaq was playing in the era that was just different, man. With that said, he gets number 8 on the all-time list of NBA players. At number 7, with 5 NBA titles, 1 MVP, the Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. Listen, Kobe was one of my favorite players. So if this was a favorite player list, he might be actually number 2 or 3 on the list. But yo, people who keep Kobe out the top 10, it's crazy. Most of it has to do with his early career. Listen, Kobe came into the league at a time when high school players could come into the league at 17, 18 years old. So he had a bumpy start. But when we talk about impact, a name that rings bells all across the world. So number 7 is Kobe Bryant. I admit, number 6 is not one of my favorite players. Honestly, I never liked watching him play. It was just kind of like just toast with no butter. Number 6, Tim Duncan. And I'll tell you why. Tim Duncan has 5 NBA championships, 2 regular season MVPs, and your man was in the playoffs every single year as a player. Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players in NBA history and probably the best power forward in NBA history. So again, not a fan, do not enjoy watching him, never enjoyed watching him, but the numbers don't lie. Timmy is one of the greats. Before we unveil our top 5, I'm super excited to talk about our latest sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the best place to play fantasy sports, including best ball, daily drafts, and pick'em. Start drafting in minutes for a shot at big cash and an enhanced game watching experience. Did I mention that Kevin Durant and Mark Cuban invested in Underdog? Once I heard about those cosigns, I had to spread the news. Sign up today and use the code GAMEPICK, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. It's like getting free money. Don't miss out on your chance to double up from the jump. To sign up, just download the Underdog Fantasy app on Android or iOS. Here are my top 5 NBA players of all time. Number 5, with 11 NBA championships and 5 league MVPs, the legend, Bill Russell. Now I get it. He played in a different playoff structure. He played in a different era. The game was just different. Guys were playing basketball in pro kids. It was a whole different game. So I understand that. However, I don't want to discount the value of 11 championships. A lot of people who do these top 10 lists, they say Bill Russell is not on the list because of this reason, or they put him at number 1 because they weight championships heavily. However, if you don't take a look at the championships in the era that it was in, who was playing, how many teams, what the playoff structure was, how many games were in the playoffs, it's you can't really even make a logical, decision on all of that. So with that being said, I want to give respect to him, but I don't want to discount what the top 4 have done. So at number 5, I'm going to go Bill Russell. Number 4 on my all-time NBA list, one of my favorite players, Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson got 5 chips, 5 championships, y'all, 3 MVPs. When I tell you, till this day, we have never seen, and this is just me giving my personal, right? My personal opinion. We have never seen a player who operates like that. A 6'9" point guard We talking about a point guard who moves like Pistol Pete. It's just something we've never seen. Like, he revolutionized the game in so many ways, and I think the fact that he's also the kind of player that doesn't talk about himself as being number one. He often, I think he's on the record for saying that Kobe is the greatest Laker of all time, which is big. The players who are like, I'm number one, I'm the best, they kind of fall down a notch or two on my list, as you'll see a little later on. But with Magic, yo, you cannot deny the 5 championships. You cannot deny the 3 MVPs. I'm going to go number 4, Magic Johnson. So in the top 3, this is where it gets a little dicey. Like, I love all 3 of the players that I'm going to talk about, but I know that many of you are going to disagree with my position. So with no further ado, number 3, a player that many of you believe is number 1, or at least number 2. And hopefully this year, like, I'm going to try to do this list every year. Like, this year, if he wins another championship, maybe he can move up a spot. But right now, shockingly enough, number 3, LeBron James. And I'll tell you why. LeBron James has 4 NBA championships. 4. 4 MVPs. How many did Magic have? 5 NBA titles. How many did Kobe have? 5 NBA titles. How many did Bill Russell have? 11. How many MVPs? Magic had 3. Bill Russell had 5, although it was a different era. Kobe only had 1. I get it. But LeBron, listen, one of my favorite players. I love LeBron James. I'm not knocking him. I'm just looking at my criteria. And I think oftentimes, just to take it back to Tim Duncan, I don't like Tim Duncan. I don't like watching him. I'm not crazy about Tim Duncan, but he's on my list because he meets the criteria, right? And personal opinion, although some personal opinion put him there, you know, talking about Tim Duncan, it's not going to be wild and crazy. I'm not going to let my personal opinion outweigh championships and MVPs. There needs to be a balance. And also the eras need to be taken into consideration. LeBron came up in an era where sinners are shooting threes all the time. And like, you can't, if you like blowing somebody's ear, you get called for a foul. It's just a different beast. So I gave him number 3, 4 championships, 4 MVPs. Let's see who's number 2. So the next player I'm going to talk about, it won't be much of a shock, right? Like, I'm not going to blow your mind like that. I'm not going to go there, right? But I would say that the person who is number 2 deserves to be number 2 according to my criteria. The number 2 all-time NBA player, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. 6 NBA championships. Whew. 6 MVPs. Whew. Crazy. And you know what? If you disagree, like I don't care. Like, I get it. Like, y'all, you never seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar play. I seen Kareem play. I didn't see him play in his prime. I saw him play when he was with the Lakers in the 80s with the goggles on. But even then, he was unstoppable with that skyhook. And according to my criteria, 6 chips, 6 MVPs. Like, honestly, I don't give a Shih Tzu puppy about what you think about my list and my criteria. If you disagree, drop it in the comments below. Oh, and just a little bonus. One thing about Kareem that people never talk about, and these are not included in my criteria, but this is a bonus. Did you know that your man won 3 NCAA titles in 3 years? He was literally undefeated in the tournament, 12-0 in tournament play. He was 82-2 in regular season and tournament play. He averaged 26.4 points in college, 15.5 rebounds. Get out of here if you hating on Lou Alcindor, aka Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And my number 1 player of all time in the NBA. I could give you 3 guesses, but you know what? You only need 1. Ladies and gentlemen, His Airness Michael Jordan. 6 NBA titles, 5 regular season MVPs in one of the hardest eras to play. Like, dudes was brutal. We talking about the bad boy Pistons, the Knicks with Xavier McDaniels. Like, it was no joke. It was warfare out there. But another thing, I want to give you another bonus on my man Jordan. Jordan won an NCAA title, and that's not included in, my obviously for NBA greatest of all time. That's not included, but yo, your man was 8-2 in tournament play, 88-13, averaged 17.7 points per game in college, and 5 rebounds. So he's at the top of most people's GOAT list. So I get it. But just know, year to year, as we do this list, things are going to change. And I believe if LeBron James can get another couple of championships, he might be able to at least slide into number 2 and maybe even take number 1 and come after his airness. Well, wait. Before we go, I got to give some honorable mentions. Larry Bird. Like, listen, a lot of people come at me hot about Larry Bird not being on my top 10 list, and it's totally valid. I get it. Bird is like, he had one of the best peaks, one of the best primes in NBA history. I'm not fronting on that. But when I think about Bird, I think about Bird laying on his back, on his stomach because his back was hurting. Like, that's my memories of Bird. So he got 3 NBA titles, 3 MVPs. He's not nowhere near Kobe. Kobe got 5, Magic got 5. Like, so when people like put it out there like, oh, Bird, it's not a race thing at all for me. Like, just for me, he don't check all the boxes, y'all. Like, he had a great prime, one of the best primes in NBA history, but he's just not on that level. Next up, with 2 NBA championships and 1 MVP, Hakeem Olajuwon. Keem the Dream, like, when I tell you, during that era, he was that guy. And winning those 2 chips when Jordan was out kind of moves him up that list. The next player most people don't even bring up in the top 10 argument, Kevin Durant. He got 2 NBA chips, he got an MVP, and he's a killer. One of the most lethal offensive forces we've ever seen in NBA history. I'm going on the honorable mention list, Kevin Durant. From the Detroit Pistons, Isaiah Thomas, 2 NBA championships, no MVPs, but one of the most fierce competitors we've seen in NBA history. Another honorable mention, Dr. J, Julius Erving, with 1 NBA title and 1 NBA MVP. And then the forgotten man, George Mikan. 5 NBA titles, 1 MVP. Yes, he played in a very old era and it was different, but you can't deny the man got the hardware to back it up. Let me know in the comments or in the reviews, wherever you're tuning in from, who's on your top 10 NBA list. I'm Robin Marks, and until next time, you've been GOAT listed.